Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Alaikum salam.
Sorry, I was having a meeting. I'm just a little late. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi kulli ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. So, inshallah, today we're going to reflect on a few verses, and I think you already got those verses. You know what are the verses we're going to reflect on it. First of all, is there, okay. Dr. Colin, can you hear me well? Some people sometimes they complain about the voice issue with my device. Just want to make sure that everyone can hear. Okay, perfect. So yesterday, if you remember, we reflect on verses that mainly about thinking. And our conclusion was that indeed Quran invited us to think critically, to think deeply, to think holistically. And we discussed several verses on that. To the level we mentioned that indeed, you know, the emphasis on thinking in Quran is no less than the emphasis, let's say, in science or philosophy on thinking. So therefore, we argue that it is indeed a false promises to say that you know, faith is a matter of just blind acceptance, is not a matter of thinking. It's a wrong perception or wrong, let's say, ideas out there. Now, today, we're going to basically, you know, engage in thinking to see the connection. Because our argument, essentially, when we do the 5D thinking workshops, that we argue the problem is connection problem. The problem we describe in a very simple term that we are disconnected or misconnected, or if even we have connection, we have very weak connection. And we talk about connection with Creator. So in that case, our argument is that basically the weak connection is because if we are connecting to the Creator through the Quran or revelation alone, such as Quran, without the creation, we argue that is a weak connection. So in a way that we designed this whole reflection of the verses in Ramadan to actually move from weak connection to a strong connection. So in this regard, we argue strong connection is when we establish the connection with Creator through revelation along with the creation. When we read the book of Quran along with the book of universe, when we see the verses of the universe in the light of the verse of the Quran. So that is our main, in a way, promises in this program, inshallah. And what we're going to do, we're going to have let's see, I have 4 different verses, verses from 4 different surah. So we're going to reflect on it. And this time, what we're going to do again, we're going to listen, and then I will give some reflection on them, and then I will ask Dr. Colin to give his reflection, and then we'll move to the next one. So instead of getting his views at the very end, and I prefer to have him to you know, help me for each section, inshallah. Is that okay with you, Dr. Colin?
Yeah, that's perfectly fine.
Okay. Well, let's do the screen sharing. Assume you can see my screen. So our very first ayah is from Surah Fussilat, is ayah 53. Let's listen first.
سنريهم آياتنا في الآفاق وفي أنفسهم حتى يتبين لهم أنه الحق أولم يكف بربك أنه على كل شيء شهيد.
Okay. So this is, I would say, it's really amazing, amazing verse. As we start to engage in thinking, I was reading and reflecting on this verse in the morning. I will say, I don't know, I didn't count many times. And I will say I reached to the conclusion that once you understand any Quranic verse, it's like the sign of maybe a good understanding and connection is when you get emotional and even make you to cry. That's, I say, that is really a sign of very strong signal. And I find it very clearly in this verse, First of all, it says, سَنُورِهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي آفَاقِ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ. So we're going to show our signs in the horizon and within yourself, within themselves. Okay? And حتى يتبين لهم أنه الحق, until it becomes a crystal clear, absolutely clear to them that this is the truth. Now, again, some look at this, that is the truth. They look at it as a truth to be Quran. Some says that that truth is about the creator. So we're going to go, mostly, both of them, I guess, is the same at the in the end. Then it says, أَوَلَمْ يَكْفِ بِرَبِّكَ أَنَّهُ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ شَهِيدٌ. Is it not enough for you that your sustainer, Rabbika, that he is the witness over everything. So that is, those against a very literal translation. Again, and we suggest that this is a good website, Quran.com. And if you go and look at it, you can get word by word translation. You go over each word, you can see clearly the meaning. And we really think that is essential that we go to the original and learn Arabic and try to understand the meaning in every word, every letter of the verses in Quran. Now, when we look at here, what we're seeing is essentially the ayah is saying that we're going to show you the sign. We're going to show you the sign outside you and within you. So first it's mentioned in horizon, then it's mentioned within you, until everything become clear that basically God is real, God does exist, and he is revealing himself. So that is basically the sign of him and the sign of his existence. So in a way that he's saying that, it's if you're looking for sign, if you want to be sure whether I exist or not, so I'm going to show you my signs outside you. Look at everywhere. You're going to see that. I'm going to show my sign within you until everything become clear, to the level that basically everything becomes signs. Everything are the signs. He revealed himself in everything, through everything. It's become like a reflection of the sun that in the daytime is being seen everywhere. So the sign of God's seen everywhere. Here, it's interesting. We're going to actually, in one of the verses, we're going to reflect on it today. You will see different order, but here you see first it says we shows the signs outside you in the horizon, and then inside you. That's because the Quran speaks to us as a human. As a human, when we start our journey, as we open our eyes, we get curious what's going on. First, we ask about what is out there. We don't really reflect on ourselves. We, as a baby, let's say, as we start to gain consciousness and awareness, we ask, what is this? What is that? So, but we're asking about what is outside, which means that the external sign become, let's say, more accessible to us as a child. And therefore, I think the Quranic description here is based on how we are presented the sign. But it's very clear that those signs are overwhelming, are everywhere, are to the level for everyone that no one can claim that God is hidden. No one can claim that I don't have the sign. Then the interesting part is the second part of the verse. It says, أَوَلَمْ يَكْفِ, is it not enough? بِرَبِّكَ أَنَّهُ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ شَهِيدٌ. So that's the part I actually look at different tafsir. I was reflecting on that. What does it really mean? And I find actually, this is Razi's tafsir. He gave it very good one. I really like it. Is most other look at as him, God, as being witness of the things and seeing the things as witnessing what we do. But Razi was saying that in his tafsir, he's saying that basically God here is telling us, if you need evidence for my existence, I myself directly, by revealing myself in the creation, outside you and within you, I become witness for you. So in a way, this is basically he become witness for his existence through his revelation in everything, which I find this tafsir is way better in a way, because it's very much linked to those basically the first part of the ayah, one says that we're going to show our sign within you and outside you. So obviously, when we look at that, and when I reflect on this verse, it reminds me the story of Moses alayhi salam. In one story in Quran, when Prophet Moses was talking to Allah, and he said, I want to see you. And it's really interesting that Allah did not say, you cannot see me. He said, okay, look at the mountain. So the reason I believe now that Moses was told to look at the mountain is very clear. That mountain is basically exemplify the creation. That if we want to see God, we can see his signs in the creation. A mountain reveal his existence. Mountain which all part of, let's say, objects within it reveal his existence. So in a sense that basically in this world, if we want to see God, the way to see him is to look at the creation, because the creation outside us or within us, our own existence, reveal his sign. And that's why that in this case, that I is referring that. So how we're going to see that? So essentially in 5D, that we try to engage in very structured reflection, in analytical thinking. We say, let's explore, let's look at the creation. When you study, it's not just you study to get a degree, to gain a knowledge. You study actually to see the sign. So in this case, we look at analytical thinking as a way of exploring for the sign. But to really make sense of what we observe, we need to engage in analogical thinking. And you're going to see, we'll give an example in other verses when we reflect that how analogy is going to help us. And then what we see to, in a way, when someone presents us a false idea of what is the source of what we've witnessed, so we need to engage in critical thinking to filter out the falsehood from the truth. And then once we filter the falsehood, and then we connect all the dots, it becomes very clear to us that everything's everywhere pointing to the creator. So that is what we call basically is a meditative thinking. And once we do that, that's going to have implication in terms of how we make a choice and how we live our life. Because if God is certain, if God is a present everywhere, if we feel his presence, then this God consciousness is going to be affecting everything in our life. Therefore, moral thinking or moral choices is direct consequences of such connection with Creator. That's what I could say. And now I want to hear from Dr. Collins.
Bismillah. I think first the key is your emphasis on connection. Everything is connected, but we don't see the connections, either because we are thinking that Allah's signs are somehow sort of like individual, quite infrequent instances of, a beauty or wonder or awe, which are so great that they can't be denied. For example, we look at a sunset or there's an earthquake, there's actually a salat which is performed, the salat of the ayat. We tend to atomize God's signs, but as you said, God's signs are everywhere. You look at a beautiful rose, a beautiful flower, you say, mashallah, but what about the dirt of an animal, the dirt of a pig, or the dirt of a dog? Those are also signs of Allah. So there's no neutral spot in creation where there are no divine signs. There's no secular space in the universe. So God's signs are everywhere. But maybe because we've been educated badly, we haven't been taught to see everything as reflecting Him. And if we're receptive and aware, we'll see that the more that we study and reflect, the more commonalities we start to see appearing between the universe, which is the book of creation, and the Quran. And of course, the Quran is full of the names of Allah, full of verses which talk about divine speech, divine signs. The universe and the Quran, they mirror each other. And just as the Quran is full of verses, the universe is also full of signs. And the words for verses and signs, it's the same word, ayat. Secondly, a painter who paints a beautiful portrait, we cannot say that there is a spot on that portrait that doesn't indicate the painter. Every single spot of ink, every color, every shade, every hue, every line indicates some way the creator. And maybe sort of preempting what's to come, our misfortune is that we concentrate on the painting and we don't try to connect the painting to the painter so that we can better understand the painter and his attributes.
Thank you very much. Let's reflect on this ayah, and this is 51:20. Let me see. These are also very linked to the Dhariyat, Surah Adh-Dhariyat. And let's reflect on, just listen to the two ayahs. Those are very linked to what the ayah we just actually talk about it. Let's see what are the differences. First, listen to the ayah, then we have reflection on it.
وفي الأرض آية للموقنين وفي أنفسكم أفلا تبصرون.
Okay, just those two ayahs. So again, you see now, and the previous one was saying that in Surah Fussilat, saying سنريهم آياتنا في الآفاق وفي أنفسهم. Says we're going to show you. Here is going to point to this. The ayah. It says وفي الأرض آيات للموقنين. So it's interesting here. It says that we have the sign, but those are for those people that who have yaqeen, who are certain about the Creator, which means that if you don't have yaqeen in your iman, if you're not sure about the Creator, that you cannot see the creation, the signs within the creation being from the Creator, because you don't have and again the understanding of the Creator that you connect them. So therefore it says وَفِي الْآيَاتِ وَفِي الْأَرْضِ آيَاتِ لِلْمُوقِنِينَ. So that is, it's basically means that it's essential that we remove the secular ideology and we negate that nature, cause, and chance. Then we can be sure about the Creator. And now once we be sure about Him, reach the yaqeen about His existence, and look at the creation through the light of Iman, then means in connection of the Creator, and read them as the Surah Al-Alaq says, اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق. Then now everything become ayah for us. So, but if we don't have such iman, we don't have such yaqeen, such certainty in our iman, it seems like we are going to miss the sign. And again, the second ayah, 21, it says, وَفِي أَنفُسِكُمْ. There's an ayah, fil ard, and then fi anfusikum, like the previous surah mentioned that, أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ. So you're going to also see the sign within yourself. But then tubsirun here, I think Dr. Colin mentioned this yesterday. Therefore, when I was reflecting on this verse, I remember that. So in a way, to have a basira, that this is not the eyes or biological eyes. This is basira. It's we can say a spiritual eye. That through the spiritual eyes you can see the sign. So in a way that it means if our eyes are somehow blinded, or spiritual or intellectual or eyes are being blinded, that we can't really see the signs. So, which means that we need to have such eyes to be open, and we need to have the light that we can use, and through those, with this light, we can see the sign very clearly. So here, I think the essential part, there are two things here. One is basira, second is yaqeen. And to reach the yaqeen, obviously, we argued that we need to look at the creation and see the sign within the creation, that we can be absolutely sure about the creator. We can see his hand behind everything. We can see that he revealed himself through everything. In a way, if we remember again in the Quran, when Prophet Ibrahim was talking to Allah, and he says, I want to know how you resurrect. And he was talking to Allah, but he's still saying, I want to know how you resurrect. And Allah said, don't you believe? He says, for sure, Bala, I believe. But I want to increase my yaqeen. And that's where the yaqeen was mentioned. And it's interesting, the way that Allah basically helped him to reach the yaqeen was Allah showed him the miracle and told him that get those birds, the 4 birds, slaughter them, cut them in pieces, put on top of mountain and invite to yourself, call to yourself, and you will see the resurrection. Now, obviously, when you read that, you might say, oh, but Prophet Ibrahim was shown the miracles. But how can I actually have the yaqeen? There is no miracle for me. No, actually, there are everything are miracles. Everywhere there are miracles. But there are 2 types of miracle. There are miracles that is, let's say, special to the prophets, comes on demand, perhaps, or with the will of Allah. And that there are miracles that is for everyone, because ultimately, what is miracle is to get a living being out of the non-living being, to make the living being from a dead being. And that's we see everywhere, every year, every place. And that's the resurrection, and that's the miracle. But now, if through the secular education we're blinded to see this as a miracle, we just consider this as a natural process, and we attribute this to certain, let's say, information that coded into the DNA and RNA, and we attribute to the certain environmental condition, that will blind us to see the miracle. So therefore, it's really essential that we look at the creation and see the miraculous signs of the Creator and reach the yaqeen based on that. And once we reach the yaqeen, then everything becomes under science and area for us. Yes, Dr. Colin, now it's your turn. I wonder what you can add, inshallah.
I don't have that much to add to what you've already said. I think you've explained it. Signs are there for those who have some kind of awareness and belief, because if you don't want to see, then you won't. So if you have some kind of awareness and belief, if you're seeking meaning, those signs are there. It's not that the signs are not there. It depends upon how we approach them, whether we see them or not. So signs are there for those who already are seeking meaning. They will find them, and meaning comes to us through signs. They're also there to increase certainty as well. So they're not just there for people who are certain, but they're also to increase certainty. And as you've said, signs are ubiquitous. They are everywhere. They are never ending. They are constantly being revealed but you have to have eyes to see them, and that is the eye of the basira, which is why he says here, tubsirun, you know, uh, will you not see? Will you not use your inner faculties? Because we saw yesterday that the only thing that prevents us is some kind of blockage, psychological or emotional, or maybe we should talk in Islamic terms, in the qalb. There is some problem there. So these signs are in material creation. It's interesting that he says art here. They're everywhere. We shouldn't look for, just signs which are immaterial and miraculous, um, and maybe not visible to the eye, things that we feel. Everything that we see in material creation, in in art. So signs are there, and also in the creation of the human soul, and in all of the lata'if, all of our inner subtle faculties. So there's a kind of triangulation of sorry, I was muted. I don't know whether you got the last bit.
Yeah, no, we don't get last minute because, yeah, please go ahead. I think a certain part we couldn't hear that, the last part.
I think it was muted from your side, right?
Yeah, because Brother Mustafa, I think is there was someone is just there, is, unmuted. So I try to mute
All
up
right.
him,
Okay.
make sure no interruption. Go ahead, please.
Okay. I was just saying that, these signs are in material creation. It says, وَفِي الْأَرْضِ. So we shouldn't we shouldn't think that signs are somehow confined to things that we can't see, to immaterial things or to spiritual realities. Everywhere, everything is a sign of Allah, and also, of course, in the creation of the human nafs and all of the other subtle faculties that we have. And the last thing I said, that there is a kind of three-way relationship of affirmation that we need to strive towards, and that's between the nafs, the universe, and the Quran, because they all mirror each other perfectly. But we have to have eyes to see, and not just ya'qilun. It has to also be a basira, an issue of this inner insight or intuitive intellect.
Very good. Yeah, that's why I really, when I was reflecting on it today, it reminded me your emphasis yesterday. It's very, it's very clear. He's Tubsirun, put an emphasis on that side. Okay, let's move on to the next verse. The next one is, in a way, give us an example. So two ayah here. Let's second 5, and this is Surah At-Tariq, and we have an ayah 5 and 6. Let's listen together. Okay, so here we're talking about reflection. Now it says that then, reflect, it's inviting us to reflect on our creation. So essentially, sometimes when you forget who you are, the Quran is reminding us and say, do you know who you are or who you were once upon a time? And you were a droplet of water. So, and don't you think that how you become human with these amazing organs and body and intellect and soul and emotion, don't you reflect on it? This is, in a way, inviting us to really remember our own journey and say, look, you're a drop of water, and now you're human with the eyes, with the senses, with the mind, with soul. So how did you get this point? And then it says, is again, the word here twice is mentioned, خلق, 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 من ماء دافق. So here, it's very clear that the emphasis is on the creation. This is not like let's say there is a DNA, there are cells, and that's evolve, or that's something's biological happen. It's actually, it's saying this is a creation. So the problem, we argue that the entire secular education is essentially blinding us to see the creation, in a way to see that everything is being created, because it explained through the causation, or explained through and laws and nature and forces. So, and then when we don't see it is creation, we don't see the creator. But the Quran, is very explicitly used that, and saying that this is a creation. Now, how can we really understand that? I think the way we do in a 5D, we say, use analogy. You can truly, understand what does it mean. Let's say you get a droplet of water. And then now, let's say from a drop of water, and you see, let's say, a robot emerge with all amazing, let's say, parts. And it's better than any robots that we have invented or we have developed so far. What would you say? You will say it's an amazing. How did we get this amazing robots, let's say with AI and with all this moving ability from a drop of water? Now, a human body, our animal body, is billion times more elegant than robots. So when we see robots, if we are amazed, we say this is an amazing, miraculous things, then why can't we see the creation of our body, the creation of other human body, the creation of animals from a drop of water to be a miracle as well? So in that case, here, فَلْيَنْظُرْ, فَانْظُرْ or فَلْيَنْظُرْ is invitation to have a reflective thinking on the creation. Here, you say reflect on yourself, reflect on your origin, and then see how we created you as a human from a drop of water. Forget about everything else. Then now, don't you see that there must be a creator, given that a simple water cannot be the source of such amazing body? So that's, I think, in a way, that's how it's the eye is inviting us to reflect on those signs that we are talking in the previous verses. Yes, Dr. Colin?
Yeah, it's very interesting, the words which are used here. If you think about a beautiful flower which is growing out of soil, out of the dirt, on that soil we often put compost, which is the waste from animals. It's dirty, it's smelly, and yet out of it we see such beautiful, delicate, and ornate creatures, such as flowers, emerging. So they cannot possibly be the creation of those, ingredients, the dirt, the compost, the manure, which is so base and so simple. And yet, from that, from that substance, we get so many beautifully created, beautifully decorated, beautifully ornate flowers and plants and fruits and vegetables. And the same applies to humankind, because we are born or created from the coming together of bodily fluids which are emitted from bodily organs, which are actually also used to get rid of waste matter. So it's quite clear, that when we say, oh, yes, this man and woman, they had a baby, they created a baby. Of course, they didn't create a baby. The baby was created from these substances, which are actually bodily fluids that we tend to think, are really quite base and quite simple. So, from such a seemingly base and very, very common, simple substance, um, what is created has actually nothing to do with that substance. You know, that is just the veil over the creation of that, you know, masterpiece of creation, which is the human being. So, you know, Allah is doing so many things in these verses, you know, telling us about the fact that we are created. He uses khuliqa, right? Which is passive. We are created out of these things. In other words, those things are, we can say, the apparent causes for the creation, but the creation cannot come from those things. And purposefully, you know, we see that plants come from soil and that humans come from this, you know, mingling of these bodily fluids, which we actually look on sometimes wrongly, I think, with distaste, because they're coming from organs which, as I said, are also used for the expulsion of waste matter. So these are amazing verses.
So a very, very, very clear, convincing sign indeed. Yeah, and it's amazing that how the Quran presented, but also it's amazing that how the secular ideology aligned us through, those fancy concepts as if this is just natural process, that there are DNA and an RNA, there are certain factors out there that are actually responsible for all this development of embryo, and that's how human is I don't know, it's really unbelievable how we turn this miraculous divine act into nonsense, a story disconnecting from the creator.
It's a made-up story, isn't it? It's a made-up story. And they use technical terms to obfuscate, you know, to blind us to the reality. And of course, they use the word science and scientific, which are kind of magic words, which we all react to instantaneously. And it's like the sorcerers of Pharaoh, you know. They knew that Musa alayhi salam was truthful, and that his miracles were truly miracles, and theirs weren't. But they cover up, and the same today. People cover up with Latin terms and scientific jargon and scientific terminology, but they can't cover the fact that we are created. And that cannot happen. We are not created by these apparent causes. Those are only an appearance.
Very, very good. Thank you. And finally, the ayah in Surah Ar-Rum, we want to reflect on that one. By mistake, I put an ayah 18. It should be ayah 8. Let's listen to it first.
في أنفسهم ما الله السماوات والأرض وما بينهما بالحق وأجل مسمى وإن كثيرا من الناس بلقاء ربهم لكافرون.
So very briefly, and the reason I brought the ayah, because you see, he says, وَلَمْ يَتَفَكَّرُوا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ. Don't you reflect on your own, don't they reflect on themselves? Which means that the reflection should start from within first, if we want to reflect that. And then we reflect. And after that, it says, مَا خَلَقَ اللَّهُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَمَا بَيْنَهُمَا إِلَّا بِالْحَقِّ. So it seems like as we reflect on ourselves and see the signs of God within ourselves, then we can be sure that when we reflect on the creation outside us, in a plant, in a bird, in stars, we can be sure that there is the same divine hand behind them as well. So the key here that if we look in term of let's say the way of reflection, so the Quran inviting us to reflect on the self first, to see the sign within us, because if we don't see that it's Allah who sustain us, who make us to think, make us to talk, make us to get food. So in that case, basically, we cannot see the sign outside us. So, and I think that is in one reason in the month of Ramadan, as we are fasting, that perhaps the first and foremost wisdom behind fasting is to know who is the one who sustains us, who is our Rabb, the who actually feed every cells of our body. But most of the time we are forgetful of that. With the fasting, that we become mindful of who is the sustainer. And then once we see his hand, his power, his mercy, his wisdom working within us for our daily, hourly life, then we can see his hand behind everything. That's what I feel that is really important to bring this ayah and reflect on this ayah along with others. Yes, Dr. Khalid?
Yeah, this is a great ayah. The very last part there where it says, "Kathira minan nas bilighai rabbihim lakafirun." A lot of people understand this as they deny the fact that they will meet Allah in the hereafter, but actually, they deny the fact that we meet Allah in this world through His creation. They don't like to uncover things because they're scared, actually. They know that they will be responsible because if they dig deeply, they will see that everything is pointing to Him. There are several other verses in Surah Ar-Rum which are quite amazing. And it shows us quite clearly that there's a kind of cover-up going on. You know, kafara means also to cover. So they are scared of meeting their Lord, actually, but they're scared of meeting Him in this world because they know that when they see everything is pointing to Him, you know, everything, as you said, is an indication, everything is a sign, they won't be able to deny. So this is maybe also about the hereafter, but it's also about this world. People do not want to meet their Lord in this world.
I think that's a very good point in a way that I feel the month of Ramadan is the month of meeting with our Creator in a very, let's say, sincere way, in a way.
Absolutely.
So we see the signs, we feel His presence, and then we, get connected to Him through the revelation and reflections, such as, the one that we are doing today, inshallah. Okay, thank you very much. Let's see, anyone's, before we close it, maybe 2-3 minutes, anyone wants to make any contribution? Is there anyone who wants to make any contribution?
Assalamu
Yes.
alaikum.
Alaikum salam, Dr. Aboud.
Doctor, nice to meet you. Thank you. Just a quick observation as we were speaking about في الأرض آيات للموقنين. يعني, one of the things which always comes to mind about the truthfulness of our path, يوم القيامة, and we've done this in the last 3D and 5D, is the butterfly. The more I think about the stages of the butterfly, starting from the caterpillar and then the cocoon and then until it becomes the butterfly. Really, if you look at it very carefully, you find this is it's not difficult for God to the cocoon or the pupa stage is almost a dry stage. If you were to hold it with your hands, I think it would crash very, very easily. But I mean, if you can think a caterpillar, which when you die, you're in the cocoon or the pupa stage, and then you come out, in Yom Al-Qiyamah is completely different thing. So it's not impossible for God to, it's one of the ayat to show that God can change or can take from something to nothing and then back to something which could be even more beautiful than the previous stage. Coming back to the ayah of the very first ayah which you discussed, of course, I use this ayah quite a bit when we meet people in the center and always refer it to the Quran and not to God Himself. And maybe I'm learning a few things today. And the ayah which سنريهم آياتنا في الآفاق وفي أنفسهم حتى يتبين لهم أنه الحق. The ayah before that, speaks about people who do not believe in the ayat in the Quran. So, and that's when you can see sometimes where the science meets the Quran in many ayat, which God wanted to show to mankind that this is really something which could not have come except from him and not from Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who does not know ilm al-ghaib. I'm sorry if I'm making a lot of sense. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you very much. And I think in terms of like the Sanuri Mayatina, that's part, and I believe that can refer both to Quran and Allah as well. So it's and I think you can see the sign of Quran, basically Quran and universe in a way that reflect each other as well. So, and in a way, the Quran reflects the sign of Allah, and the universe reflects the sign of Allah. And as you see the sign in the universe that overlap with the sign in the Quran, then now that gives you certainty that the Quran must be the word of God, because they both come from the same source. So I see that you can read it in both ways. And I look at those tafsir that I think most, as you mentioned, look at this as Quran, and I think the word is not explicit in this ayah in a way that give us, let's say, an opportunity to reflect perhaps in a deeper way as well. And as you know, the Quranic word cannot really be limited to one meaning. It can have other meaning as well, as long as it's not really, against the overall theme and message that they consider to be fine. Thank you very much. Anyone else wants to make a comment? Okay, thank you. I think Alhamdulillah, it was really great, and see you tomorrow, inshallah, at the same time, 4 p.m. Assalamu alaikum.